Hi everybody, this is WadeBloodgood. Good morning. I just wanted to share a few stories with you this morning about my mom and some stuff that I had went through with her. When I was born, she had Addison's disease and her thyroid had been taken out, so she had to take thyroid medication every day for her to pretty much even live. Then a little later in my life, maybe around 11 or 12, I believe was the age, my mom had gotten diabetes, and she had a pretty severe case of diabetes where she was insulin dependent, which means you have to give yourself a shot every day so your body can have the insulin in there to manage your blood sugars. So every time you eat food, your body turns it into sugar. And if you don't have insulin to regulate that, you can have high blood sugar, which is extremely bad for you. And a lot of people that have diabetes suffer from that, and it's what creates amputation and stuff like that, I believe. And then there's also low blood sugar, which my mom suffered from quite often, which when you have low blood sugar and you don't have the insulin in your body either to help regulate anything, you basically kind of fall into seizures, can happen, coma, a lot of disorientation starts off. So my mom really suffered from that quite often because she wasn't your normal diabetic, and she was just really sensitive to the medication altogether. So it took her many, many years to find a balance, and even when she did her best, it still was struggling to always keep 100% on point. When I was 3 or 4 years old, though, one of my stories starts off with, we lived just outside of Gresham, Oregon, in these apartments called Alder Royal, and I'm not sure where my father was at the time, but he wasn't there this morning, on this particular morning. And when I woke up, my mom was not awake, and normally she was, and she would be either making breakfast or something like that. But this morning she wasn't, and I went to try to wake her up, and she wouldn't wake up. And so I went about my 3-year-old or 4-year-old business, and I tried to make myself breakfast by pouring all the cereal out on the floor and pouring all the sugar out on the floor in big piles, and I turned on all the burners, and all the burners were basically on high, and they were heating up pretty big where they were starting to create some smoke, which was a good thing because the manager of the apartments could smell this funny smell, and he came knocking on our door and realized something was wrong on the inside, and eventually ended up getting into our apartment and realizing that my mom was in the bedroom in the bed, and she was in a coma and she couldn't be woke up. And he called the ambulance, and that basically saved her life by me turning on the burners, and that was able to alert somebody. Now that was not my intention, and I didn't know that I had done that until later in life when I was told that had happened. And now to fast forward from 3 to 4 years old up to 12 years old. Now, I came out today to the Park Rose district where I used to live, just in Portland, Oregon, and came to 108th and Halsey and turned down that street because I used to live on 108th, and Russell was pretty much the cross street there. And we lived in this house that had a flat roof on it, and it was painted completely black, like a black house with a flat roof with no pitch on it. It was kind of strange. But at this house, I have a story that just has never really left me, and was kind of a big day in my experience when it came to my mom being sick with this diabetes. I believe I was going to Park Rose Middle School at the time. I might have been in the 7th or 8th grade, but I didn't catch the bus home that day. And I walked home with some friends and crossed the freeway and came up 108th on the back end instead of from Halsey. And I walked up to the house and up to where my house was. And when I did, my stepfather was on the front porch. And I believe my stepsister was probably there too. And my stepdad was just furious. He's like, where have you been? You know, your mom's sick. She needs your help. And he was pissed off. He's like, you got to get in the house now and help your mom. And I was the baby. I had an older brother, an older sister. My older brother's 4 years older. My older sister was 1 year older. And then I had my stepfather, which he was a full-grown adult. And but I was the only one in the household that actually knew how to mix up my mom's medication. And on this particular day, when I came home, he was panicking because she needed to get one of these shots that we had in the cupboard, and all he had to do was read the directions and mix it up and give her the shot and follow directions, and things might have been okay. But he didn't. He waited for me because he didn't know how to do it. So when I got home, he was yelling like, hurry up, where have I been? And basically, I went in there, my mom was in a full-blown seizure. And she was talking in words I've never even heard before. I like tongues. She was saying things I have no idea. So I basically rushed in and I grabbed this diabetic kit. You have to take a syringe and suck out this sugary water type stuff and put it into another vial. And you have to roll that around and mix it up, and then you have to pull that back into the syringe and then flick the bubbles out and squirt it up so there's no bubbles, and then you have to shoot that in like the fat of her leg or her arm or her butt or wherever. Excuse me. And so I did that as fast as I possibly could. And the directions basically say, after 20 minutes, if the person is still unresponsive, to call the paramedics. And it's highly dangerous for somebody to be in these type of seizures, and which end up leading to coma for any period of time. So her sitting there flopping around while my stepsister and my brother and my stepfather's there, I just realized, like, who are these people for me? And my mom didn't come out after 20 minutes. And so we had to call the paramedics, and she was rushed to Woodland Park Hospital, where she ended up going many, many, many times. This was like the first event of being yelled at to help my mom that kind of happened repetitively over and over. And at some point, nobody had to yell at me. It was just my job to look after my mom. And my mom, when my stepdad was finally gone and he was no longer in our lives, I was constantly going in and checking on my mom. Like, I would go in at her room at 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, and she'd be sleeping. And my mom had a tendency of kind of sleeping with her eyes a little bit open, which was kind of weird. So it almost kind of seemed like a person was dead. And I would always just go up to her and I would see if she was breathing, and I would shake her a little bit and say, "Mom," real quiet, and she would wake up and open her eyes a little bit, and I was like, I just want to make sure you're okay. And basically I did this every day for a long time, until she died. And people don't realize in the family, a lot of people in the family were always saying, you know, she's not as sick as she makes out to be, or she's not, you know, doesn't have any control of her sickness, and she's kind of enabling her son to move on in life and to grow up and to mature because he's around there helping her. And nobody realized that she needed somebody there all the time, because whether she followed the directions of the shots or ate the right food or whatever, this stuff wasn't necessarily always controllable. And there were so many times I went in to check on my mom at 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, and my mom is completely covered in sweat, like drenched in sweat, because she's actually going into one of these seizures, like the stage before that, or potential coma. And so I'd saved my mom's life hundreds of times, you know? And it was just something that was my job every day that people didn't realize. And it was a lot for me to handle at 12 years old. it was hard for me to handle even as I got older and was doing it all the time, because I kind of did want to go out and live my own life. As I was driving up to this area too today, I had passed a convenience store. And here's another story about my mom with the diabetes. I was probably about 14 years old at this time, and we were driving down Halsey, and I noticed my mom was acting a little bit different. Now, she wasn't sweating or anything, but her attitude and character was completely different. And I told her, I said, "Hey, Mom, I think something's going on. I think that you might be on the beginnings of having a diabetic reaction." And my mom was a really nice person. Like, she never really spoke horribly to me when I was a kid or anything like that. But at this point, she was just told me to shut up. She was highly irate and pissed off. She said she wasn't having a reaction, and I was really scared. And there was I could see like an AM PM or a convenience store up ahead on the left-hand side. And I just told her, I said, "Mom, I gotta go to the bathroom really bad. Can you pull in there?" And she whipped across 3 lanes into the driveway, into a parking stall. And I thought she was, the speed that she was going, I thought she was gonna blast straight through the window. But she didn't. She hit the brakes right when she needed to, and we were just in the stall. And she was mad, and she threw it into park, and she told me to hurry up. And I reached over and turned off the car and pulled the keys out really quick and ran out of the car, and I went inside the store, and I went in there and I bought her a Mars bar, just a candy bar with sugar. She wasn't out of it, so she was coherent enough to, like drink an orange juice or eat a candy bar or something with sugar in it, which often when my mom was having a reaction or beginning to have one, that's what you would do before you would have to mix up a shot and shoot it in her leg. So I went in and I bought that, and I came out and I told my mom, "Here, eat this candy bar," and she did. And within like 5 minutes, she was back to her normal self. And I told her, "Yeah, you were having a reaction," and I explained to her that she was getting mad and she really wasn't listening to me. And I was terrified, because we were driving in the car at like 45 miles an hour, and anything could happen. And she started crying and breaking down, and she said she was so sorry and she didn't mean for that to happen. And I realize more and more now, like my mom was going through so much with the diseases that she had in her life that, as a kid, I didn't even really understand any of that. And now as an adult, as I'm sifting through my own personal problems, I am realizing more and more and having so much more forgiveness towards my mom for a lot of things that I kind of had some resentment for, because I didn't even understand, and now I do. And so it's so much easier to forgive and let go of those feelings that I had. There's one big resentment and regret that I feel that I have, is because everybody in the family didn't understand how severe this diabetes really was. And I think they think that my mom was just negligent and she didn't know how to take care of herself properly. And in the process, I was probably in my 20s and still living with my mom, like 19, 20 years old probably. And I had to move out. Like I had to go. Like my mom wanted me to move out in order for me to grow up and become a man and experience and to be able to become an adult. So I was asked to leave, and I left, and I was homeless for a while on the streets. And then I got myself in better positioning. But during that process of me leaving my mom and her living a couple years on her own and having friends that discovered her during these times in having like a diabetic seizure or in the state of where she needed the paramedics called and had to go to the hospital, that happened many, many times when I didn't live with her. And I appreciate every single person that was there that saved her during those moments, because it were all these moments that helped her life live as long as it did. And the people that didn't understand what it was I was doing for my mother was helping keep her alive so I could have her, because she was all I had. Whether she did the best things in the world all the time is besides the point. I still loved her, and I know that she loved me. She made a lot of mistakes, but we all make mistakes, And I only get one mother, and that's it. And I love her tremendously still, and I know she loves me. And I realize, so during all of this, of me, her telling me I have to go now, she became a foster mother, and she was taking on, she had like 3 young kids. She had a baby, 2 young kids, like 8 years old and under, and another kid about 11, then maybe like a teenage girl. So she had like 5 kids in her house, and stress for her was not good. It would always activate a lot of her illness. Stress was not part of the game, and she shouldn't have had as much stress as she did, but she was going to do what she was going to do, and taking care of these kids was quite stressful, but it was also quite a noble thing, because she wanted to help kids. She did like kids, and she wanted to do better in a lot of areas, and this was her chance to do that. And she basically had a seizure and went into a coma and died one night with these kids in her house, and she didn't wake up. And her friend called her in the morning, Amy, and she didn't answer. So they went over to see what was going on, and they found her, and she was dead. And what I regret is I knew that if somebody wasn't there to watch her, like myself, that knew exactly what's going on, and that would wake up at 2:30, 3:30, 4:30 in the morning and check on his mother, and more often than not, she would be on the verge of having some sort of reaction, knew that this was inevitably going to happen. And I felt responsible because I was the one in charge of that position. And I wasn't there to watch her, and she died. And I know now that it's not my fault, that this is the way it was supposed to play out. And this was her choice, maybe not necessarily mine. And there's nothing I can do about it now. And what I realized about all of this stuff, sifting through my thoughts and trying to get the things out from the core part of myself that's got me clouded, that has had me clouded. I'm not clouded anymore, but I'm allowing myself to share these things, to sift through them and look at the story, to look back on what was really going on, and what is the real story behind it that I would like to tell myself, that feels a whole lot better about that. And the truth is I believe I was probably born into this world for that reason, because I'm a nurturer. My parents were just a vessel that allowed me to come into this world. Whether they stayed the whole time in my life, or I was left up to the orphanage and adopted off, or became whatever, they were just here to bring me here. They weren't necessarily supposed to stick around and teach me anything. But this particular journey, I was brought to be able to kind of be a parent to my parent, and to be able to be there for my parent in ways that even my parent couldn't be there for me. And that's a beautiful thing, and I'm so thankful for them to be the vessels that have allowed me to enter this world, to be able to nurture more people, and to try to help more lives live longer, as long as they choose to want to live. I can only tell my story and share and try to help people out. Another thing I realized too is that my mom passed away had nothing to do with me. This was part of her plan and a part of her journey. And even though I don't understand it, or didn't understand it at the time, I do understand it now. And through all of this, of what I've realized as well, is that I was born, and at a young age, I was already trying to save a life without even knowing it. I was already trying to take care of my mother without even knowing it. And during the process of this life, I have suffered a lot of different types of abuse, and I was never nurturing myself, and I was never taking care of myself. And I actually had more value on myself because my mom was alive. It was almost like the symbiotic relationship people would say, she keeps him around, he leeches off of her for food and a place to live, and then she has somebody that basically looks after her. But the truth was, it was a symbiotic relationship, but not in that fashion of being like a cockroaches and stuff. It was, I needed her to come to this world, and she needed me for the times that nobody else was going to be there for her, even though me and her have both been surrounded by people our whole lives that should have been a very much more healthy support group, and they weren't. And in the process, I leaned on that too much. Like, I needed her because she was the reason why I was here. But the truth was that's not the reason. The reason is I'm here is because of me. I'm here for me, and me is what's allowing myself to be able to nurture her or other people. But I stopped, and that is the most important thing to me still. But during growing up, I was not taking care of myself. During the process of taking care of my mother, I wasn't taking care of me. I was on drugs. I've been on drugs since 8 years old. Started off smoking pot, and every year after, it was something else, and it just, by 15, I was on it all, doing it all, and selling that shit. Because I was disconnected and I wasn't taking care of me. And I never even knew what nurturing me meant. And I lost myself. I didn't even know who I was. My identity was lost in all of these things. And so why I wanted to share some of these stories about my mom and her sickness and some of the things that I kind of went through dealing with that, and the adults and the older people in my life that weren't dealing with that, and how I had to step up, was because I believe that there's a lot of people that feel the way that I did at the time, of where you almost feel helpless because you're doing all you can. You feel alone because there's nobody that is helping, and you feel like nobody even gives a shit about you no matter what you do. You can do great things, nobody gives a shit. You can do bad things, nobody gives a shit. And it just makes you feel like you're nobody, and it makes you feel like the things that you're doing for yourself are... I just didn't feel good enough about myself, so I tried to destroy myself by doing drugs and by misbehaving in a million different ways. And I just want anybody to know that's out there that's going through these type of feelings that you are important. And I know that you might be out there taking care of somebody, and it's a noble thing to do. And I'm not telling you to stop taking care of them. But what I am saying is you got to start taking care of yourself, because that's what is the most important. And when you're taking care of yourself, you kind of keep your cup full. It kind of fills you up and keeps you full, so you have the strength and you have the power to take care of these people that are sick and people that maybe don't even understand what you're going through. So you have to be that for yourself, because I found often in the world, if we're waiting for other people to do that for us, they're not going to show up. They're not there. A lot of people are so confused within themselves. They need to do it for themselves. They don't have the energy to do that for me. And that brings me to a story about a cousin that said that to me when he was getting off of heroin, and I needed him in my life, and I felt like I was there, but he told me he didn't have it enough for me, and I took that offense to that at that time. But now I completely understand where he is coming from and what he meant by that, and God bless him for be able to communicate that to me, even though my perspective couldn't accept it. Because it's very important that we take care of ourselves first. And that doesn't mean you're selfish. To me, it means you're self-centered. And self-centered means well-balanced. Selfish is kind of like, it's only good for me, and it ends up hurting a lot of other people, and I don't give a shit about that. Being self-centered means I do good for me, and then when I'm healthy, you can come around and you can feel that well-being of centeredness. And that's really what I'm striving to do, and I'm striving to share these things with others that may be in the similar shoes that I was mentally, of feeling like, you're out here doing everything you can for everybody else and nobody gives a fuck about you. But I want you to know I care about you, and I care about your well-being. That's why I'm making these videos. That's why I'm reaching out. That's why I'm taking the steps to help teach people the steps that I have taken to alleviate all of that grief and all that regret and all that pain and anger and sadness. And I know that I still drum up emotion and stuff, but I'm very compassionate and I'm an empath. I feel these feelings when I think of them. I can watch commercials that are about emotional things and I feel the situation, and that brings emotion for me. But by no means am I sad. I'm a really super happy person, and I'm actually happy to be vulnerable enough to share this intimate side of me where I can show you my emotions. I don't want to be scared and hide my emotions. I want to be able to share them because we all have them, and when we bundle those things up, that's where the unhealthy stuff begins. That's where we need alcohol to deal with our anxiety, or we need to smoke pot, or we need to do all the other drugs that people do to deal with the situation or to escape from the situation, just to a temporary different feeling that feels good. But inevitably those drugs wear off and we're left with even a heavier bad feeling on ourselves. If you're not doing drugs, there's a lot of other things that we do that are not good for ourselves that maybe we need to step back and take a look at. So if you're having these feelings of, I'm not good enough, or nobody cares, or I wish I had a support group, I hate to say it, but it starts within ourselves. Like, we have to almost show up and become our own biggest fan. We have to show up and become our own support group, and we have to start loving ourselves the way that we expected others to love us. We have to reparent ourselves and start to give ourselves the things that we kind of expected our parents to do for us and other people that they never did. Well, you can't wait for other people. You got to stand up and start to do it for yourself and show yourself that you deserve it. And when you do that, here's what happens. Slowly but surely, you start to grow stronger. And the world, there's tons of people out here in the world that are your support group. They might not be your blood family, but they are your family, and they love you tremendously, and they are here for you, and you'll be able to receive that help and that support because you'll be open to it. When you start to close yourself off and all of the feelings that there is no support as well, and the truth is a lot of us do not have healthy support whatsoever. But once you start to take care of yourself, you can recognize healthy support, unhealthy support, healthy friends, unhealthy friends, and family members, and all of that, and then you just navigate accordingly, and you go to the people that are giving you that positive support. For me, often I've denied this support because I've either been ashamed or I want to do it all on my own. But I'm learning that there's so much I do on my own, but once you grow through that on my own work, it's great to have an outside group to share the growth, to share your experiences, because in all of that sharing, it empowers you even more in the belief of the steps that you're taking. It relinquishes a lot of these regretful, guilty feelings that we have, and the pent-up anger and the sadness and the lack of worth and the lack of love that we end up having for ourselves that show in all kinds of different ways. And we literally are sacrificing ourselves for everybody else that, hell, may not even sacrifice anything for you. And the truth is I don't sacrifice myself to get anything from anybody. I don't expect anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to start to feel better, and I want you to have a fruitful life. I do things because I want you to have a better life and because I want to offer a helping hand. I don't really want to come over and do yard work for you because you want to, because you're going to pay me. I just want to come over and do the yard work for you. I want to come over and be helpful in things that you need, because that's what friends do. That's what family does. That's what a helping hand does. And when I offer it free, then I really don't want pay. And if I say, hey, I need to be paid, then I want to be paid. So in the end, I just got to know my boundaries, and I've got to set the limits for myself, and I got to know what I believe and what I stand up for. And when I do that, and I practice these beliefs every day, and I share those things with everybody, and I attract the type of people that have those type of beliefs that also are expanding themselves, and then together as we share, we help grow ourselves in the wisdom and the knowledge. Because a lot of us, recently the word comprehending things, like a lot of us, we go, oh yeah, I understand what that means. Yeah, but do you comprehend what that really means? Like, you can read the directions, say, yeah, I read the directions, but do you actually know how to put it together? Do you know how to follow the steps that is actually going to put all of the things that you're trying to build together? And so when we do stuff like that, I kind of got off track there a little bit, but for the most part, if we just pay attention and we grow and we learn and we help support each other in this aspect, life can get really, really good. And feeling alone doesn't have to feel so lonely, and taking care of people doesn't have to drain you so much, because you can be full and know that it's a very noble, humble thing that you do. The world needs nurturers. The world needs people to take care of people, because there's so many of us that are sick, and there's so many of us that are sick taking care of the sick. And we really need to take care of ourselves is my big message here. Not so much the story that my mom was sick or the things that I had to go through, but the main message is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first, because that's where you become the biggest benefit to everybody else in your life. And it really does turn out in a lot of blessings in a lot of ways, and it relieves so much tension and the stuff that we carry around on our backs and in our minds that are just if people could see these things that we're carrying around, it's just a massive amount of shit. Like we're hoarders, and we're just carrying around these burdens of beliefs and thoughts and feelings of bullshit, and we need to relinquish them and allow that to get out of there, clear the space so we can allow people in that we can accept the support, so we can have our lives fully nourished, not only from the inside, but on the outside too. Thank you for listening to today's ramble rant, and hope everybody comes and joins the WadeBloodgood Journey page. And I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to my videos, and I hope this is helpful to somebody. And I'll see you all again. Have a great day.